It is a Friday with the temperatures around 29 degrees centigrade, and this is Abuja, the central mosque there on the skyline. It is a beautiful sight to behold from, as Mark will say, from high up there. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Nelta Igbe.
Indeed, good morning and welcome. I'm Maupe Ogunyusuf. What a beautiful sight to behold. But don't let the sight fool you. The temperature is a little different, quite warm here in the Federal Capital Territory. And what a sight for a Friday. We certainly know that worshippers will be thronging that mosque today, which was built in the 80s, I believe, for prayers much later today. But that's the iconic Central Mosque of Nigeria right here in the Federal Capital Territory. Welcome to the program. Ayo.
Yeah, most certainly a sight to behold, Marweh, and a very, very beautiful one at that for anyone. And hey, why would you see this kind of place and not feel like praying, right? Well, this is Lagos. This neighborhood you are looking at is what they call Ikeja GRA. It's known to be occupied by the creme de la creme on Lagos mainland, heavily residential. There are a few government offices here and there. Very serene and quiet environment it is supposed to be, and I hope it is. Of course, there's been some issues around infrastructure, road infrastructure, particularly in the neighborhood, but hey, who's looking at it right? It's been there for quite a while, and that is what we have today. This is Lagos. Good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. This beautiful Friday morning, I'm Ayo Makinde. Now, what's happening today?
Well, what's happening today? Quite a lot of things are happening today. Makwe, as warm as the weather might be here in Abuja, today happens to be the UN's World Water Day.
An excuse to drink more water.
So if you haven't been drinking water, think about doing some. How many liters a day are we supposed to do?
Well, as many liters as you need.
As many liters as you can, but minimum is at least 2 liters. So while you're drinking the water, also think about conserving water, because of the warmth and the dryness in the atmosphere, there's a tendency for more evaporation. So conserve water, manage water, treat water well, and water will treat you well. Indeed, World Water Day today.
Indeed, always spare thought for those who are not able to get this water, because sometimes we take it for granted. Yes, for those who have access to water. There's so many communities, and I think that's something that a lot of governments have stopped prioritizing, the provision of access to potable water, which is supposed to be a human right. It should be one of the things that should be enshrined in our rights, that people, should have access to water. People and livestock should have access to water. But also happening today, there'll be conversation. I mean, INEC has been holding this engagement with stakeholders all week long. We've seen them meet with CSOs, meet with media, meet with political parties. Well, today they're meeting with security agencies. That's the conversation they're going to be having today. So it'll be good to look forward to that and to see how they can continue to shake hands, especially with the upcoming elections that will be coming up later this year. So it'll be interesting to understand and see the outcome of the conversations that happen with INEC and the security agencies.
Mark, that matter of election security is it's really a serious matter, because we've heard of, yes, ballot box snatching, but beyond the ballot box snatching is also the attacks on individuals who are either managing the elections or coming out there to vote. There've been incidents of attacks on them and all of that. So election security is something that needs to be taken seriously, and I guess that's why INEC is meeting with the security agents after meeting with the media and all of that. Ayo.
Security, but this time schools, the security at schools. The NSCDC is going to be holding an interactive session today about the Safe School Initiative. NSCDC commandant will be hosting it, a special interactive session. Of course, all of the concerns, hundreds of Nigerian students that have been kidnapped, taken away, wherever, whatever it is, that's also been there. And of course, at 10 o'clock this morning, we will be doing some mathematics. Find Find the value of the naira. Well, wouldn't that be the X this morning? I don't know. But hey, find the value, the fair value of the naira. That is what business is going to focus mainly on at 10 o'clock this morning. Before then, a number of things listed. Next is a look at today's papers.
And let's go look at what some of the papers are saying. Starting out with The Guardian, they lead with a story here that a lot of people have wondered about. The Guardian, land grabbers, speculators wreak havoc on citizens' investment. It's their big story, and it continues on page 4 and 5, but you see the captions in there. You see the picture, 1978 Land Use Act of 1978 due for review. Then, despite laws like the Lagos Property Protection Law of 2016 and the Ogun State Prohibition of Forcible Occupation of Landed Properties, Armed Robbery, Kidnapping, Cultism, and other anti-violent and related offences law, which was formulated in 2016, land grabbing remains a menace. Apparently that's about Lagos and Ogun, but it's also across the country. That's the big story on the front page of The Guardian. Land grabbers, speculators wreak havoc on citizens and investment. That's it from The Guardian.
Well, I know that will be their big story, which they usually feature on Friday. But take a look at what Leadership Friday has for you this morning. It's definitely a story that every woman should be interested in. 36% of Nigerian major bank CEOs now women. Don't forget that this week there was an announcement by one of the major banks out there, Zenith Bank, the appointment of another woman as the CEO of its own bank as well. But apparently she is not the first. She's the first in that particular bank, but she's now joined a lineup of other women who are now top CEOs of their banks, of their respective banks. And they list them for you right there on the front page of Leadership Friday. They include Zenith Bank, Fidelity, FCMB, Unity, Lotus, Citi, FSDH, GT Bank, and Union Bank. So very interesting. I'm wondering,
well, they're taking over.
They're asking the question on the front page of Leadership Friday, will trend hold? Will it continue to be so? I think that, my own guess is that it's come to stay. I mean, if women are able to show that they're able to do just as well as the men, especially with profits, delivering on profits and impact. Even more important is impact. I hope that banks will also see impact as a measurement of profit as well. But you'll find details on page 4 of the paper. I have a number of other stories for you, things that we should be bothered about. Diphtheria kills 4 children in Kano. It's still something we're struggling with. And of course, Naira gaining 10% to 1,382 Naira after CBN clears Forex backlog. Stories on page 25. Let's leave it there for Leadership Friday.
Well, the Nigerian Observer has a health-related story as well on its front page. And look at what it says. Lassa fever claims 20 lives across 16 states in 1 week. That's precise, isn't it? Lassa fever claims 20 lives across 16 states in 1 week. Well, we hear that. Anyway, that's the lead story of the Nigerian Observer this morning.
Daily Trust is the other paper I have here, and it says thousands may miss the Ramadan Umrah as Saudi Arabia fails to issue visas. Daily Trust. Thousands may miss the Ramadan Umrah as Saudi Arabia fails to issue visas. That's their lead story. Agents to incur losses after booking hotels. Pilgrims lament. You see the picture of some faithful going to collect, breaking their fast yesterday evening here in Abuja. But beside that, a couple of other stories that are not so heartwarming. Like, for instance, police demand 0.5 million naira damages from Kanu TikToker merger. Okwama, don't shield troops killers. Delta governor warns monarchs. And northern senators demand action on Kaduna abduction. That's it from Daily Trust.
Okay, well, New Telegraph is also focusing on what is happening in Delta State. Slain soldiers, no going back until perpetrators are apprehended. That's according to the general officer commanding. Owurewore cautions traditional rulers against shielding suspects. That story is right there for you on the front page of New Telegraph.
The newspaper is also looking at something related to that. Killing of soldiers. Okwama women, children trapped in forests for 6 days. That's the latest story of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. The details of it you'll find on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Has a number of riders on its front page. Neighboring communities refuse to accept Okwama residents. Starvation looms in Igbamoturu in Bayelsa over military siege. Residents can't farm fish. Man abandons wife, escapes with 2 children. Oberewori warns traditional rulers against shielding suspects. Killing of 17 soldiers, attack on Nigeria's sovereignty. That's according to the federal government. Governors condemn killing, observe minute silence in honor of slain personnel. Okwama killings could snowball into a bigger conflict. That's according to General Olanrewaju, retired. Independent probe of Delta killing will indict VIPs. That's ascribed to ex-DSS boss Ejiofor. You had that conversation with him on Channels Television yesterday. Find the details on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. That picture is a picture story. Read it yourself. It's very exciting, especially for the young people. That's the lead story of the Vanguard newspaper today.
And with that, we'll end a look at some of the dailies and what they are leading with. We'll go real quick to look at something that's making the news from the southeastern part of the country in a moment. Just stay with us.
Heartburn and indigestion? Try Just Eat. My recommendation for the past 26 years, Just Eat. Reliable remedy for heartburn, indigestion, flatulence, and acidity.
Do you know that you can now print all your essential items for events without even having to leave your home? It's the Cash Print Combo Deal for all events.
Yes!
Weddings, conferences, birthdays, burials, etc. Starting from 495,000 naira only. You get 50 invites, 50 A2 size posters, 50 16-page brochures, 1 large backdrop banner, 1 roll-up banner, 50 jotters with pens, and 50 souvenir carrier bags. Whatever event you're planning, we can adjust to your budget and quantities. Just send your pictures and other information through WhatsApp, and we shall send a design for your approval. Approve your design, and we will produce with super high-quality digital print technology. We can even arrange delivery to your location. Call us now on 0913-156-5016 or 0812-794-9323 or visit our social media pages. Cash Prints, digital printing at super speed.
Investing in the capital market can be tricky as the numbers move in different directions. Sometimes the bull bellows, other times it's the beer that roars. In all of these, an investment decision has to be made. On Capital Market, we help you take the right decision. Join us at 7 p.m. every Saturday, only on Channels Television. Capital Market, investment tips for you.
And indeed, welcome back. We're going straight to Abia State, where the governor just signed a bill into law. I'm trying to find it. Signs law repealing Pensions Act for past governors and deputies. When the news of the State Assembly passing that bill broke, a lot of people were wondering what's going on here. Well, the governor signed it into law. So former governors are not getting, and their deputies are not getting pensions anymore by that law. So let's talk to the special advisor on media and publicity to the Abia State Governor, Mr. Ferdinand Ekoma, who joins us via Zoom. Mr. Ekoma, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you for having me.
So tell us, what's this about? Now, that conversation around governors and former governors and their deputies, they're getting a pension, is one that has gone on for quite a while. But Abia State seemed to have taken the bull by the horn and knocked off that law with another law. What's going on? Can you tell us more about this?
Thank you once again. Democracy is all about the people. And I still recall it was Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe who said that it beholds maturity, healthy politicking and civilized mind, that in a democratic dispensation, the views and the yearnings of the people must be respected if free and fair, quote and unquote. So you will agree with me, and you and I know that democracy is all about the people. The position of Abians, their views, their suggestions, their stand is that that law should be repealed because it does not serve their interest. At all times, the interest of the people must be put first. In our state, people are owed several years of pension arrears, dating back as far back as 2013, 2014. And as we speak, the governor is grappling with that challenge. Before the end of this month, the governor will begin to clear years of pension arrears running into tens of billions. What I'm talking is verifiable. So if all these governors meant well, while they held sway, they would have ensured that the citizens, the civil servants who, served the state and retired, would have been paid their pension arrears. But they allowed these things to get accumulated over the years. And that is why the governor has taken a decision to say, no, this is not in the interest of anyone. While you are in charge, you must strive to build a formidable institution. I think it was Barack Obama who was in Ghana a few years ago as president. He came here to visit. He said that Africans should strive to build strong institutions among strong men. Here, after being a governor, you become stupendously rich, powerful. You have access to everything. But the citizens, the civil servants, the pensioners have nothing. So we want to pass a strong worded message across that. When we say we're in the new Abia, we mean every bit of it. So what we are doing is to build a formidable institution that will serve everyone, to make politicians understand that it is not only about them, it shouldn't be about us. Those of us who are in government now, we shouldn't think that the state belongs to us, that we can wake up and enact any law that serves our own selfish interest, forgetting the interests of the people. So that is the direction the governor is going, and we are happy that this decision, is enjoying the massive support of our people.
Okay, interesting times indeed. You said it's all about the people, and this ensuring that we're building an institution that will serve the people of Abia. Again, it's really interesting. But then, are you not concerned about the backlash that might follow?
Well, first, if this thing was so important, I'm sure it would have been captured by the framers of the 1999 Constitution. If it was also that important, I'm sure but if you look at the Constitution says that the House of Assembly may enact a law that will provide for the payment of such entitlements or whatever to former governors and former deputy governors. Now, the question is, without trying to personalize this thing, the question is, have we really fared well in Abia over the years? No. It means that because you have broken infrastructure, because our schools are in a state of dilapidation, because Abia is still in a very chaotic state, except the massive intervention being done by this government, a whole lot of things were in a very shambolic state. So if these people had served well, the people would not even have any reason to be saying anything. The people would have even reason to say, to condemn this government, say, why are you taking this action? It's vendetta, it's this and all that. But then it's also important to state that this is a law that outlives everyone. The present governor will also become a former governor. The present deputy governor will become a former deputy governor. So it's a law that is not targeted at any individual. The greatest backlash you can have in a democracy is the one that is coming from the people. So the people are in the majority, and we are not afraid of any backlash as long as we are doing what is right, what is in tandem with the aspirations, with the desires, with the expectations, and with the stand of our people. So we're not bothered about that.
Okay.
If there's going to be any at all.
I think the question is to know if this was the governor's idea or if this was an idea that came from the people.
Both. It's the governor's idea. When the governor was campaigning, he said a lot of things, and most of those things he said are the things he's trying to implement. For example, he said he defined tax during the campaign as government's share of the prosperity it has created among the people. So when the governor assumed office, because he was condemning the practice of extortion and intimidation, double taxation, and all the rest of them. So when he assumed office, he declared tax holiday. For almost 5 months, people were not paying anything anywhere. Operators, bus drivers, and all the rest of them. This is verifiable. Okay? So what the governor said he would do, even though he didn't specifically say, I was going to repeal this thing, but he made it clear to the people that he was going to take action. For example, he talked about blood tonic. On many occasions, he wrote it on his page in the Tuesday newspaper, politics of blood tonic, and said he was going to stop it. So though this is part of it, that is what the governor has come to stop. And so it's a joint position. It's our position, and it's also the position of the people.
Okay, I ask that because, some people will say, excuse me, the idea behind ensuring that people who are in office, especially governors, have a pension is to, give them some assurance that, your future is taken care of. There will be no need for you to put your hand in the till. That's what that's what the states that have promulgated such a law believe that it's meant to kill. That if governors feel assured that their future has been taken care of, then they can face their work and do the job. Does this presuppose? I mean, in Abia State, while one can appreciate the current circumstance and the scenario that you have painted, given that pensioners have not been paid for years, and even people who are not even yet pensioners, workers, I think even doctors were owed up to 30 months in arrears. These are, things reports that have come out of Abia State. Does it then mean that in future, when we hope that things will get better and that ordinary people can aspire to office? By ordinary people, I mean people who are not of great means can aspire to office. Do you see a situation where this sort of law might be necessary to actually help reduce the temptation, whatever temptation there might be, for them to want to put their hands in the till?
Thank you. I think your analysis, as far as I'm concerned, very fantastic. Taking it from that perspective, and of course, I believe that this may have actually been what was intended before that law, was passed into law. Before that law came to be. But like I said, unfortunately, those who presided over these states over the years didn't convince the people that they actually deserve such pensions. So maybe as time goes on, we'll begin to look at it and see, for example, we are a government, we have a governor now. The governor will need to convince the people that he deserves to be paid pensions. But then, a governor, enacting a law or ensuring that a law is enacted to protect his interest is something that should not be allowed to happen. I think Martin Luther King said that those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves. And under a just God can no longer retain it. So the decision that we have taken at the moment is that this must stop for now. If there is any government that is going to review it in the future, that is after, that's after huge progress must have been made. So I think the review should be predicated on the transformation, on the change of attitude, the change of character, change of, style in governance. That should be what will drive that. But for now, that decision stands, and it's popular, it's acceptable, and a whole lot of things are going to be reviewed. A whole lot of things are going to be changed. Because if we tell you what we met on ground, we're not interested in talking about individuals. But the state was destroyed, and we are confronting a lot of challenges. We're trying to review a whole lot of things. People here appropriated lands, government lands for themselves. People demolished schools in Abia and built eateries and hotels. I'm talking about many schools. I'm not talking about 1, 2, or 3 schools. This is what is verifiable. Channels can come here and investigate what I'm saying. Destroyed public schools and built hotels on them, converted for their own personal use everywhere. And count up to 10 schools that suffered the same thing. So we are confronting these challenges, taking them one after another to ensure that sanity is restored in the system.
Mr. Ekoma, some would argue that it looks as if the focus is Abia, not the rest of Abia. Abia is more than Abia. There are a lot of other places that need attention, but it looks as if more attention is being paid to Abia. Is that true?
Okay, well, Abia is like the superstructure. And that has always been the position of the governor, that if you invest in Abia, if you invest massively in infrastructure, provide security and everything, that investors will come. So what you are going to generate in Abia, what will be happening in Abia will have spiral positive effects in other local governments. But that is not to say that all we are doing is only in Abia. No. For example, there is a strategic road that is ongoing in Umuahia, and that is Osa Road. The road that starts from the tower, and now the road is almost at the stage of completion. By the time we are done, the Abia Tower will be demolished, and we'll continue from there to the Onimo, that's the boundary between Imo and Abia, where we're going to build a dual carriage road. And as we speak, the 67-kilometer Umuahia Ozuakole Abrebo Hofia Road is ongoing. It was awarded to 3 reputable construction companies. It's a very strategic road that leads to Abia North. And the reason why the government awarded it to 3 construction companies, different 3 construction companies, was to ensure that the road is completed on or before the end of this year. That is a 67-kilometer road. And just 2 days ago, the governor was at Arochukwu to flag off the construction of the Ndokreke Abam Arochukwu road. So it's not only but there are many ongoing road projects that are springing up in different parts of the state. In Umuahia, we have a policy we call zero pothole policy that is opening different parts of them, covering all the potholes to ensure that our people begin to heave a sigh of relief. A whole lot of things are happening, not just Abia. There are policies and programs that are also happening in Umuahia to, develop the state capital and take away the status of a glorified village that it has enjoyed over the years.
Well, Mr. Ekema, if you can hear me, the natural thing that I would want to ask you will still go back to the community that you're talking about, the people. The people live in various communities down the ladder. Now that this law has come into play, it means that the government is going to be saving some money. What is the plan of government for that saving? What will the government be diverting the resources that is being saved now into?
I'm happy, sir, you mentioned the communities. For example, we have mayors in our local governments. Prior to now, local government chairmen, as they were called then, DC chairmen, as they were called then, used to receive a paltry sum of 10 million naira to run their local governments. The allocations were completely diverted. Don't worry, we're going to bring channels to come to Abia and see for themselves. They will tour our different local governments to see what we confronted, what we met on ground. As we speak, the mayors are now receiving their allocations incomplete. They are receiving full allocation, but in phases, because the government is making sure that these allocations are tied to specific projects. And that is why, as we speak, go to the different local governments of the state, you see massive ongoing work, being carried out by these mayors, because the government is intentional about taking development to the grassroots. So these funds, like you probably mentioned, will be tied to projects that will impact the lives of the people positively. Even it's not as if the money is even humongous, but we are looking at it from the policy point of view. Okay, we are trying to pass the message across for people to understand.
There are those who would also
say that perhaps,
just 1 second, if you can hear me.
Now receiving your own.
Just 1 second, if you can hear me. There are those who would also say that perhaps this is all political. It's just the government of Abia State just trying to make a political statement by showing that they are more pro-people than the previous political parties, which are probably more prominent than the party in power at now. How would you respond to those who say that these issues are just political, populist ideologies to get the goodwill of the people?
Well, politics is all about the people. If you decide to play politics, as long as their politics is pro-people, what is wrong with it? Let us say there's no election by the corner. We came from the opposition. We defeated them. We're in power. We are not afraid of anything. We are doing very well. Our people are so excited and happy. And we don't indulge in, we don't stage manage people to support us, to sing. But see the governor, whenever he steps out, you see the reactions. These people are on ground. We are not running our government on social media. On ground, you come here, you see things for yourself. People are being paid on or before the 28th of every month. It's unprecedented.
As you said, Mr. Ikoma, it's at the...
begin to clear the arrears of pension. These are the things that inspire the people. So if they say we are playing politics, it's okay as long as we are playing positive and pro-people politics. There's nothing wrong with it.
It's all a function of perspectives, wouldn't you say? Ferdinand Ikoma, Special Advisor to the Governor on Media and Publicity in Abia State. Thank you so much for your time this morning and all the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. You have a great day.
All right. You too. Well, the economy is always a hot topic. That's up next. Just stay with us.
And welcome back. Fixing the economy, as I have said, is always an interesting topic. How do we get our economy fixed? Now, yesterday we spoke about that story of the CBN settling the backlog of forex demands, trying to steer the economy in the right direction, and needs a lot. Still, some would say, still needs a lot to be done. How do we transit from a consumptive economy to a productive one? How do we move away from the implications of the forex backlog and all of that? All these things pile up, and some will say, you can't take one, leave out the other. How do we move forward? Helping us to look at all of this, we have Mr. Tayo Aduloju, CEO of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning. And it's a pleasure to be here as always.
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you.
You heard that, you saw the story. CBN's cleared that backlog, and a lot of people are happy. Some say that gave strength to the Naira, which has gained about 10% against the dollar. But from the economic point of view, what do you think?
So the first thing to acknowledge is that we had operated for a long time a very opaque monetary policy system, which created, in many cases, a lack of clarity. For example, on this show for many months, you asked the question, what is the backlog? What's the size of the backlog, right? So I think the first thing is we are seeing a more transparent central bank in first declaring what the backlog was. And I think that was the first important signal. The second signal, at the Economic Summit in November last year, you remember that we put the CBN governor to task as to would he clear the backlog, and he gave the commitment he would. And he has now kept his promise through a incremental set of clearing the backlog whilst announcing to the country his line of sight to liquidity. This is important more from the transparency and accountability part of the CBN's role, because building confidence begins with keeping your promises, but also with telling everybody where we are. The central bank has also noted, beyond declaring of the backlog, that of course there is a portion of the backlog that, based on the Deloitte's audit, is now subject to review, has not been meeting the standards for payments. And I'm sure those will be individually debated. And that's also important, right? That even the disputable backlogs are going through a structured process of being validated or cleared or reviewed, as the case may be. Monetary transparency is everything. In fact, if you don't have monetary transparency and accountability, you do not even give the basis for which confidence in your currency as a stock of value then begins to appreciate. So I think these are important steps. Now, with the appreciation of the Naira, look, the truth is, you need a line of sight to stable liquidity over the long term to truly find monetary stability in terms of FX. This one action is important. It's crucial to view this action in the context of the other CBN circulars, which deal with issues of risk factors within the financial sector. But forward, it builds into this broader confidence that there's a central bank that is going to pursue this risk-based prudential interventions whilst keeping its promises. And so you see the reserves also appreciate a little as a result of some of these actions. So that's welcome. Going forward, it's important that the CBN continues this part.
Before we get to the part of, before we go forward, on the forward, let's step back a bit. You talked about a transparent monetary policy. What about the fiscal side? Because there's no how the economy can move on the path we want it to if the fiscal side is not matching the...
Absolutely. So when you discuss macroeconomic stability, you must discuss both. Fiscal and monetary policy must work hand in hand. Monetary policy creating the price stability, and fiscal policy ensuring that there is an efficient allocation of national resources to drive productive sectors and growth.
Which is quite scarce.
Yeah. On the fiscal side, the first challenge for many years has been, what is the size of the forwards? What are the size of the contracts? What's the size of the sovereign risks? We see the coordinating minister of the economy create clarity now what the size of the liabilities are, what the true size of ways and means was. These are important steps. And remember that for a while, these were questions that we were asking that did not have answers. You see, for example, our top asset in terms of FX earning move back to the Federation account, the NMPC. All these are signs that fiscal transparency is being built back up. And so you must have both. The point you were making, you must have both fiscal transparency and monetary transparency. Well, of course, fiscal transparency has to also roll into a robust fiscal plan, especially in high volatility and macro instability as we're experiencing it. We know that there is a fiscal plan in the works, but it's kind of delayed in coming into, and that, for example, is important to create forward guidance for both international and local businesses in terms of where the country needs to go. So, for example, what is the investment promotion plan? We know that there are conversations in Murphy, for example, as to making some of our national assets sweat to bring some FX in. We know, for example, based on the budget, that there has to be some borrowing. Will there be some international borrowing? What's the borrowing plan? We know, for example, that in managing some of our liabilities, we might need to renegotiate some of them in terms of timeframes, etc. All these must come together to create, one, a fiscal plan, and then a transparency in terms of the implementation of that plan. And of course, the president has announced, to buffer the effect of his own macroeconomic policies, a broad range of palliatives that should impact citizens. We must also see fiscal transparency and accountability in the transmission of these social investments, because if these social investments do what they are meant to do in terms of cushioning the effect on the social outcomes that citizens feel, that adds together to create a more transparent system across board. But this has to happen together.
Well, interestingly, it was saying that you're already answering the question, what next? I mean, if indeed what the CBN says it's doing is what it is doing, you know, then what next for the economy? But I think we can scrutinize that a bit more. Let's go back to, you know, the initial statement about your initial statement about transparency and how that is exactly what is, you know, giving the economy some confidence, or will I say investors some confidence. There are those who are not still comfortable, you know, with just the CBN governor's announcement. It wasn't the governor, I think it was the director of, you know, public relations or so, that made the announcement about how they've cleared the backlog. And it does appear that in some quarters, they want to know how. They think that transparency in the how is important. As you also highlighted, it's not all of the 7 billion, which the CBN had said was the backlog, that they have cleared. It is a part of it. The question, or the part that they have been able to verify. Some people want to know what exactly was the portion that was verifiable, what portion of it has now been referred to security agencies for further scrutiny. Do you think that these kinds of questions and doubts, which need to be cleared, are they also necessary for the CBN to clear?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's an audit report that has thrown up the 2.5 billion that requires further scrutiny. It's not simply the CBN sitting down and saying, what do we not pay, right? So that audit report throws up the need for further scrutiny. And that in itself should be made available to those who have claim within that backlog so that they can see what the queries are. If they can provide sufficient evidence to answer the questions, some of that might become valid or not, or otherwise as the case may be. So transparency on that is crucial to give confidence also. And the fact is that, like I said, we were at a point some months ago where if you ask this question about what the whole backlog was, nobody knew. The CBN governor has provided, if you remember in December, there was a 2 billion, he announced a 2 billion, then I think a 1 point something, then the 3 points. So there's been a process of announcing incrementally his clearing of this backlog in the news. So I think to that degree, he's been open about it. The degree to which we want to see the breakdowns, I think, I mean, we know as the NESG from speaking to the other sides, now that's those that have the backlogs, that they are seeing movement, right? We've not spoken to everybody, but at least to the entities that has been announced they've received clearance of backlogs. In speaking to these institutions, there is an acknowledgement that these backlogs have been cleared.
Do you think that how we're meeting those obligations, is it important for us as well?
Absolutely. Well, look, the truth is, Mark, I keep saying if all of us were the children of a billionaire who had $10 trillion worth of assets, and our father left us $100 billion worth of liabilities, I'm sure we would figure out how to clear the liabilities and move forward. That's a Nigerian problem. Nigeria, by asset size, is not broke. A lot of Nigeria's issues in translating its potential into value is in the institutions. It's how we've designed our institutions, how we've designed our policy, how we've executed our own policy. And so the how matters. And the how goes to both it's more than your fiscal policy, it goes to your entire economic strategy. Okay? For years, we prosecuted an economic strategy that was insular. In terms of FDI, we're doing under $1 billion on the average year on year for a decade, right? If you don't earn FX, you won't have FX. So the truth is, to create a line of sight to foreign exchange, we must become expansive in trade. We must become conscious of our revenue risks. Like I said, our top earner is oil and gas for now. If you look at the volume of trade, that's where our earnings come from in terms of FX. And then, of course, you can see what is encumbering our gas and oil revenues. It's security and political And we must solve for that. So as part of the economic strategy, you must ask, why does all theft persist? What are the systemic syndicated risks, actors, institutions, and groups that keep us as a country almost lockstep, where we are, stationary, unable to move? We must solve for that. That requires broad elite consensus, because as you know, no one can steal 100,000, talk less of 400,000 barrels of crude a day, without a broad syndicate. And the current government, if you look at the military operations in the Niger Delta, it has seen a rise in production levels. But of course, way below our potential. We must solve for that. That has to be part of the economic strategy. But beyond that, we must solve for our trade. The fact is, it's a foregone conclusion that $50 billion volume of trade based on oil and gas is not our future, that our future is in non-oil. And we've said it's almost cliche at this point to discuss the fact that we have the potential to match our oil exports with non-oil exports. But that is then, of course, locked into a broad set of hindrances to the ease of doing business in Nigeria, which also need fixes: infrastructure deficit, large-scale insecurity across many of our value chains, including food, which is one of the key drivers of the food crisis we are dealing with today, and which also must be part of this economic response.
Oh, well, I think my colleague Ayo also has questions for you. Ayo.
Thank you, Mokwe. Dr. Akeredolu, you hit a particular point, and you said potentially Nigeria is not broke. And you have also said that if we don't earn Forex, we will not have Forex. You've highlighted that our major Forex earner now, as at this moment, is oil and gas. But then we do have FDIs. We have funds repatriated from all over the world by Nigerians. The value of the solid minerals sector in Nigeria, according to the Minister of Solid Minerals, Mr. Deleleke, puts something close to $800 million in value. The agricultural value chain is also tremendous. And so are the services sector, digital technology, and all of those things. The reason I'm putting this forward, which I am sure you have more precise data than I do, is that many of these potential reside in the states. All the federal government can come up with are policies that can guide. What serious collaborative potential do we have, or collaborative gaps are there that need to be bridged between the federal and federating unit, other federating units, so that we can marshal these, harness these resources, and be the major Forex earner that you say we can be?
So these are great questions. Let's start from the top with foreign direct investments. The rule in global FDI markets is that well-packaged, well-sequenced investment promotions that are ring-fenced and de-risked is the way to attract FDI. That's the global rule, right? If you do not have well-packaged, well-sequenced investment promotion, FDIs don't arrive. And it's just that simple. There is an national investment policy in Nigeria, but it does not have an investment promotion plan to back it up. Okay, so that needs to be fixed immediately by the Ministry of Trade, Investment and Industry. Secondly, we do not have a current industrial policy for the country. You need an industrial policy to create a sense of what competitive advantages you want to drive in the country and what sectors will drive this export expansion that we're talking about. And that needs to be coordinated with the states. You're right, because every factor endowment in Nigeria resides in a state. The age where states simply come to Abuja to see a federal allocation, those days are over. And we are seeing some breakout states that have become more thoughtful about this. Edo, a couple of other states that have looked at their factor endowments, that have mapped it out, that have identified what factor conditions they must put in place, that are putting laws in place and attracting investments to their state. So this is doable, but it must happen at scale across the 36 states of the Federation. It's time we ask all 36 states, what are you bringing to the Federation? what part of the export revenues will you contribute to? Imagine if all 36 states are pursuing $1 billion worth of something they will export. That's $36 billion. That's already nearly matching what you are waiting for from oil and gas. So the truth is we must mandate the states to go further than they have gone so far. But remember that some of our battles are locked in the Constitution, which gives a lot of exclusive powers to the federal government, for which, of course, the states have been asking that in the devolution of power, we see some of these resources domiciled at the state. Another area, for example, is food, right? Agriculture. Agriculture, for example, every state has, based on the Constitution, the capacity to expand agriculture. You have to ask the question, what is each state's agroecological potential? What can it produce to add to the country's overall strategic food output? What is it adding? What is it in every state that they can contribute to agro products for exports? What are they adding? Imagine every state, one of the most expensive crops we can plant in Nigeria is maize. Okay, imagine every state just does 1 million metric tons of maize. We are way above our national demand. National demand for maize is 15 million metric tons. And by the way, we are underproducing to meet our target just for maize. And we have states that are agroecologically enabled to do maize, and if they just did 1 million each, we will not have a gap. So we must ask more difficult questions about what we contribute to this federation. But that also means that the federal government must become a better coordination and cooperation partner with the subnational entities to get stuff done. It means that, for example, your Food Security Council should be expanded to include the governors in broader conversations about production. We just finished dry season farming in 14 states. And the cultivation in the 14 states that could drive dry season farming is way below their potential. To get Nigeria to where we have no food security crisis, you must be cultivating almost 30 million hectares of land. Last year at this time, we did 21 million hectares of land. So, of course, we have the food scarcity that translated, plus, of course, other inflationary drivers into the food insecurity we saw. You can't solve those problems simply sitting in Abuja. You're right. You must solve those problems by activating states to create more agroecological zones for farmlands, do the hard work of getting seed, fertilizer, water, and land security, because, of course, 30% of our states cannot secure farmlands, which is a different problem altogether. But this has to come together. And so a collaborative framework where we allow the states to do more, the federal government plays a bigger role in terms of coordination, with clearer strategies at the federation level, is the way to go.
Well, just one more question for me, Dr. Akeredolu, and quite a number of issues have been raised from the response that you gave, talking about the gaps in the food production and all. I did a research, I think, in circa 2014, 2015, that I found out that of the 360-something metric tons, or is it tons, of honey that we consume in Nigeria, we only produce 16. And that gap, I don't even know how we're going to begin to have that conversation around it. But it speaks to one thing. You talked about agroecological zones. Do you think the special agro-industrial processing zones being funded by the AFDB, and which, of course, a number of states have signed on to now, do you see it denting the mark? Do you see it making any significant impact within the next few months?
So the $134 million African Development Bank intervention is a welcome intervention because it contributes to this idea of you must have production centers that translate their outputs into processing centers, that translates into food and into export products. But what the AFDB is providing is seed. It's not sufficient to match national demand. National demand must be met by a more comprehensive national strategic architecture that identifies the national demand thresholds and commits states that have the agroecological potential to rise to it. Then what AFDB brings that comes along is additional capacity. Okay, any other? I mean, we also have, for example, the deal that the federal government has signed with the Germans and the Brazilians on mechanization units. That's also welcome because, again, you cannot farm 30 million hectares of land with hoe and cutlass. You must go mechanize. The current mechanization rate for Nigeria is 0.27 horsepower per hectare. We need about 5 horsepower per hectare to begin to discuss cultivation at industrial scale. So the truth is that more work is needed. And unfortunately, food security systems weaknesses are chronic. They've been here for decades. I mean, you've reported them on channels for as long as I have known. They won't go away by knee-jerk reactions. They will go away by an integrated national plan. And we do have a national plan. If you look at the medium-term National Development Plan 2021 to 2025, it does set a target for 40 million hectares of cultivated land every year. But it sets a target for 3.5 HP per hectare as the mechanization levels required. It sets a target for 25% access of high-yield seeds to farmers. Because they say it's not just cultivating land. You see, if I give a farmer a low-yield seed on 1 hectare at a factor of 1, right, what he produces is not really expansive. You know, if you give him the same 1 hectare of land at with high-yield seed at a factor of 5, he produces 5 times more, right? So yield matters, and yield goes to science. Okay, we have high-yield seeds in Nigeria, but the access is very low because they are more expensive seeds, and they need nursery markets to mass produce them. The challenge is we're seeing a disconnect between, the Seed Council has already approved a lot of varieties of high-yield seeds, but is unable to attract private sector capital into it because for now, most of it is purely government intervention-led. Okay, so you have to de-risk that sector to make it attractive to capital. So the size of access to high-yield seed grows. Because how do you make the farmer profitable? His capacity to yield more per hectare, per acre. Then he becomes more bankable. Nigeria's soil is about 14% fertile across board, which means you need to fertilize each hectare with about 400 kilograms of fertilizer. Again, we have all the 14 fertilizer blending plants that Sovereign Authority invested in. We have the new deal with Indorama of the 14 billion that the president went to India to discuss. 7 billion is Indorama's partnership with NNPC for gas to fertilizer. Some of these things are already happening, and so it's not like the government is doing nothing. It's that it must come together to achieve scale of response to match the scale of the crisis. And that requires the urgency of all of us. It requires state governors to do way more. We've finished the dry season farming, so what has happened has happened. It's much better than last year, but not as good as we wanted it. Wet season farming is coming. We need to make sure seeds are coming in, fertilizers are coming in. We are ramping up and ready to be a country that is not hungry. For now, we are hungry. This time, 2020, we were 24 million food insecure people. Today, we are over 100 million food insecure people. And people wonder why there's a security crisis. Exactly. So the truth is, we need to get going. We need to move, and the urgency to get stuff done is today. You know, and by the way, please feed your neighbors. Many of your neighbors may have already passed food insecurity. Indeed. And so be good to each other, everyone.
Akeredolu, there's so much we need to talk about. Yes, beyond the cultivation, there is a part of the harvest. Then the value addition, or is it the market structure that needs to come in to put it all together? Indeed, but I want to thank you so much. We'll have to end it here for today. We'll definitely have you back in the studio for more conversations. Dr. Akeredolu is the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group. Thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
And at this point, we would head out to the business studio where I think Ini John Mekwa has some more to tell us as regards the economy. Over to you, Ini.
Thank you so much, Neota. Well, I know that there's more business information right here. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. We do this in about 30 minutes, less than that, but we'll do as much as we can. Now, let's start from the global space. Oil prices slipped on Friday on the possibility of a nearing Gaza ceasefire that could ease geopolitical concerns in the Middle East, while a stronger dollar and faltering U.S. gasoline demand also weighed on prices. Talking about prices, look at the numbers. It's red for this morning, down to $85.25. From about 86 it was in about 24 hours, down 0.6%. That's for Brent. And then for WTI from the United States, well, we see that the gap between Brent and WTI has widened compared to what we had yesterday, about $5, almost $5. 80 cents is what we have for WTI, 55 cents for a barrel, after it also dropped 0.6%. Looking at the drivers, the hope of a ceasefire in Gaza is one major one also. And then we're seeing some movement when it comes to the value of the dollar. Stronger dollar obviously makes oil more expensive, and then demand drops. Oil was trading low on reports of a United Nations draft resolution calling for that ceasefire. It seems to be somewhere in the horizon. We do pray for that. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said he believed talks in Qatar could reach a Gaza ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. Blinken met with Arab foreign ministers and Egypt's president in Cairo. In the United States, which is the world's top oil consumer, gasoline products supplied, a proxy for demand, slipped 9 million barrels for the first time in 3 weeks, and that indicates a possible slowdown in crude demand. Also, the value of the dollar trades inversely with oil is threatened, and of course, when it threatens, then we see demand also reducing. And still talking about oil now, the UK multinational financial institution Standard Chartered Bank has said that it expects global oil demand to reach new levels in May due to ongoing geopolitical tensions and supply constraints in the energy market. According to its latest analysis, key factors influencing this projection are stronger than expected demand growth observed in major economies recovering from the impact of geopolitical tensions such as the conflict which we talked about, and looking forward to a ceasefire from that talks. And then yesterday we did see that FAQ was shared between the three governments in Nigeria for the month of February. Look at the numbers. Total amount shared yesterday for February at 1.152 trillion naira. Total revenue stood at 2.26 billion naira. Distributable statutory revenue was about 101.3 billion naira. Revenue from that we saw VAT, that's value-added tax. Well, revenue was shared after that meeting at the Federation Accounts Allocation chaired by the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister for the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun. According to the communique, we see the numbers there. Those are the details of what was shared yesterday after that meeting. And we see revenue from VAT. We see has gone up right there, 428.806 for the month. Money transfer levy also contributed. The revenue also went up about 15.157 billion naira. Exchange difference revenue of 607.4 billion naira at the end of that. All right, for our viewers on DSTV, we'll take, you have another view now. Yesterday, remember, we spoke to the co-founder of Tony Elumelu Foundation. She was here and told us they have an announcement today. Well, you're about to hear that announcement. That's if you're watching on DSTV. We're about now to join on DSTV only. Tony Elumelu Foundation announcement of the 2024 beneficiaries. About 1,200 people are about to get their lives changed. Venue is the UBA House in Marina. So for DSTV viewers, it's time to go to the Tony Elumelu Foundation. But for our other viewers online on a local platform as well as the...
This is a live Channels Television event.
Of the program. I think that deserves a round of applause. So the Tony Elumelu Foundation appointed EY to review the 2024 applications, and thus we looked at, we shortlisted a couple of participants, which I'll mention in a few minutes. So the total applications reviewed were 1,485 from Nigeria, while we reviewed 240 from Benin Republic, and 825 from the rest of Africa. Of course, this went through a very rigorous process, wherein we set a criteria in which that selection was done. And one of that is ensuring that we looked at the feasibility of each of the business plans of what the entrepreneurs presented. We looked at the market opportunity to be sure that there's indeed an opportunity. We looked at the financial understanding of all the entrepreneurs. We looked at the scalability of their businesses. And thus, lastly, we looked at their leadership and entrepreneurship skills. So in a nutshell, these 5 key criteria were used in evaluating all the participants, and which out of all those that were reviewed, we came up with a shortlist of about 590 from Nigeria. Let's give a round of applause. 109 from Benin Republic. Another round of applause. And lastly, 405 from the rest of Africa. So how did we get here in terms of the review methodology that was adopted? So we used a pre-assessment, we went through a pre-assessment phase, and then a review phase, and then the post-assessment phase. So for the pre-assessment phase, we validated the scope of what was going to be done, and also set expectations with the Tony Elumelu Foundation team in order to ascertain what were the clear requirements and the expectations from the entire exercise. So we validated the minimum requirements as well that we wanted to use in evaluating all the participants. And lastly, we validated the scoring criteria and the weight that goes into each of the reviews that were done. And we came up with a detailed scoring methodology, which was used in the entire process. The second was the review phase itself, where we used the first level review through the initial scoring by the Tony Elumelu Foundation enumerators themselves, and then the second level went through scoring by the EY reviewers. So you can see the first level through an initial process through the TEF enumerators. The second was scoring by the EY reviewers, and the third was a validation of the scores or review of those scores by our quality assurance team, which ensured that anything was not bypassed. And indeed, this cleaned out any issues around duplication, any false applications, any fake applications, and all whatnot. And then we came up with a scoring sheet to determine, the final list of applications. And then post-assessment, we came up with a short list of applicants, and then we drew up a summary of all the applications using a summary of the criteria, the methodology, and the results. And here we are. We're going to go through the evaluation methodology. Wow, this is really faint for me. I'm struggling to see it. Sorry? Okay. Sorry if you don't mind. Let me just... apologies. I'm struggling to see the screen, really.
And please, can we turn off our phones? At least the ringer should be low.
Okay, thank you. Apologies once again. So the application to participate in the 2011 Foundation for program for 2024 was done through a list of criteria, like I said earlier on, but most importantly, the selection process, whereby we had to train the first level of enumerators to define what the selection criteria was, and then that first level scoring was done effectively by the enumerators, and then we determined applications to be reviewed based on average score per country. So we came by to arrive at average score per each country that we received applications from. And then the first level evaluation of applications was done by EY, where we applied